On a beautiful day in June 2018, I went into work as usual. By 11 o'clock that day, I had no job. I was 56 years old. I realized I had two options. One was to panic and cry, and the other option was to take control. I decided to take option number two. Good morning, everyone. I'm Raina, and welcome to Small Retired Life. On this channel, we talk about all things retirement and about living a small retired life, but a meaningful life. So let's talk about my layoff story at the age of 56. As I said, I went into work and I thought it would be a day like any other day. And I had meetings with clients that morning. My job entailed a lot of client meetings that were out of the office. So I had a coffee set up with a client. And so that's what I was going to do that morning. And I went to my meeting and I heard my phone ding. And I looked down and there was a message from my boss. Now, just to backtrack a little bit, my boss actually worked in a completely different city in a different province. And she came in to our office that day and she had the HR guy with her. I'm sitting there at this coffee meeting and I'm thinking, you know what? I have a feeling I'm getting laid off. And so when my phone dinged and I looked down and it was an email from my boss saying, hey, I know you're out of the office, but could you come back? I just want to have a quick meeting with you. I knew at that point that I was getting laid off. And there was a couple of things that kind of went through my mind. And I thought, okay, I have two options here. I can completely lose it, freak out, panic, cry, whatever. And then the other option was to actually take control of my life and take control of the situation and just go back to the office in a position of strength. And I decided to do that because I'm a bit of a stoic. I kind of feel that life hands you situations and there are things that you have no power to prevent from happening. Essentially, your company has decided to lay you off, and there's nothing that you can do about that. They have made that decision. So the better way to be is to accept it and to be in control how you deal with that outcome as opposed to letting them have the power of dealing with it. So I went back to the office to face the music. I got to the office and I went into the meeting and there was our HR guy sitting there with my boss. And so I knew for sure what was happening. I very kindly, before anything started, said, hey, I know I'm getting laid off. I'm all good. And I looked at my boss and I asked her to leave. Because quite frankly, I did not feel like hearing why they were laying me off, that it wasn't my fault, and whatever kind of thing that they tell you in situations like this. And I just really didn't want to hear it. And so I said, I'm just, going to go through my package and we'll just leave it at that. At that point, I decided to go home and to process the news. And I think that's the important thing to do is when something like this happens to you is give yourself time to actually process what's happened, grieve your job, because losing your job it's not a good thing. You need to grieve that job. You need to just settle in with yourself and kind of figure out how you're feeling in that moment. I basically sat there all afternoon just going over what had happened, and I decided that I just wanted to take a time out. It was June, summer was coming, and in Calgary, summers are really short, only like maybe 2 months, and the rest of the year it's pretty much winter practically. So I just decided to enjoy my summer, and that's something I've never done before. I've never just been laid off and taken the time to just enjoy myself and enjoy the summer. What you have to understand is Calgary is an oil and gas city. So a lot of companies here get bought and sold, and getting laid off is kind of a normal thing. And I had been laid off before, but it was different because I was a lot younger. And typically, those kind of layoffs included huge packages. And it was kind of great to get laid off because you got this huge amount of money, and you were able to put it away and then find another job. And that's what happened to me. I, was laid off, and then I got this huge amount of money, put it away for retirement, and a week later I had a job. But this was different. I mean, 56, you guys. Like, a lot of employers just don't want to hire you when you're that old because they honestly kind of believe that you're only going to be there a few years and then you're going to retire, and they just don't want to put that kind of an effort into training and steering a new employee to get basically 3 or 4 years out of someone. What concerned me is like, I had thought about retirement, planned for retirement, but I really wasn't kind of looking to retire for at least another 4 or 5 years. So I was thinking like maybe 60, 61, 62, but it was a very kind of in the distance thing. And I definitely wasn't looking to be not working at the age of 56. So I went through my summer, just really enjoyed my summer. And in September of that year, I decided that I was going to go to Melbourne for a month or so. My son lived in Melbourne, and I just thought, here's an opportunity to go over there and actually spend some meaningful time. So I booked a trip and I went to Melbourne for just over a month. So essentially, that brought me back to Calgary at that point at some time in November. And in November of 2018, I decided to take stock of my finances, really look at where I was at, what would be the best course of action. Do I look for another job? Do I try to make things work the way they were? I really was not in a position to completely retire at that point. I needed at least another 3 years minimum of work. And the way my layoff package was structured, it really was in my best interest not to look for work immediately after I got laid off. But by November, I knew that I needed something. So I started looking for work, and it was not looking good. I had applied at quite a few places and wasn't really hearing back. I was reaching out to my network, and I don't know, all of a sudden I saw an ad come across my LinkedIn for a maternity leave position in my field with a company that was my client in my previous job. And I reached out, and it was a contract position for 1 year. And I thought, wow, this would be so great. It would give me an extra year of working. It would give me time to kind of decide where I wanted to go and just give me a little bit of breathing space to assess if I wanted to retire or if I wanted to go to work or, what the situation was. So I applied for the job and I got it. Of course, when 2020 came around, February of 2020 to be exact, I finished my job in the middle of that month, and literally 2 weeks later, the world went into lockdown. And everything was different. The great thing, the absolute best thing that happened was because I was in that contract position for just over a year, I had gathered enough hours that I actually qualified for unemployment insurance. If you're American, Canada does have a little bit of a better social structure than you would find in America, but only because we pay a lot more in taxes to be able to have this. But this really worked out for me because essentially the world shut down. I couldn't look for anything else, even if I wanted to look for anything else, because no one was hiring, no one was doing anything. Companies were trying to figure out how to function without having employees to come into the office. So I was able to get unemployment insurance for almost a year. And so that essentially tied me over for another year. So out of the 4 years that I really needed, between my package and my contract position and my unemployment insurance, I covered off pretty much 3 years. So I knew that I would be okay. I knew that I could go into retirement and figure out what was next for my life. So here are some tips just off the top of my head that I can give you if you get laid off in late life. Number one, the most important thing, take control of the situation. Take control of your layoff story, because that will make it so much easier for you to deal with the aftermath and all of the thoughts that come to you after you've been laid off, because you go through, anger, denial, sorrow, all of these grieving processes, because jobs are a big thing for us. They're our livelihoods. They are what allows us to pay for things. Secondly, stay positive as much as you can, but don't be afraid to grieve. Don't be afraid to just sit there with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or whatever your comfort drink is and grieve your job and grieve the life that you've had and that you no longer have. I think the next thing after that is to adapt a growth mindset. Instead of thinking about everything that you've lost, begin to think about the type of opportunities that you can gain or that you can make happen, because these opportunities are in your power to make happen as long as you think about them and you get to plan them and you kind of consider the options. So I would say that should be in the early stages of, after the layoff. After you've done some of these healing things, I would say the next step is to really look at your finances and establish what the situation is. Do you have any savings? If you don't have any savings, clearly you need to take one path. If you have some savings, then you can take another path. And it's important to just sit and really look at your situation, because that will guide you towards the next opportunity. What came next and what decisions I made next, honestly, you guys, it's another video, because it was like the world was out there telling me that I needed to shake my life up, change everything, get out of my comfort zone, and just see how I was going to deal with all of that. So I think you need to come back and listen to my post work life story and understand how I entered retirement and how I got to a place where I was living a small retired life and made it a meaningful life. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And hit that notification bell, because the next video will talk about how I went into retirement and the circumstances that brought me into a whole new way of living my life. Hey everyone, it's post-production me. I was not going to leave you hanging, and I realized I really should show you what my apple bread turned out like. It was pretty amazing. I'm not a baker, and this was the first time that I've baked this particular recipe, and I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. It was really good with a sharp piece of cheddar on it, and also I learned how to do a voiceover.